Hey guys, how it going? Today we're going to be creating an architectural elevation in Photoshop, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So the first thing you want to do is import your plans into Photoshop and gather a bunch of seamless materials like I've done here with the stone wall. You want to import these and you want to just duplicate them to cover the length of whatever wall you have. Create a new folder or group in Photoshop and put them into that group. Now you want to select the wall and you want to create a masking layer which will attach that wall to the surface of what you've got. So I'll show you just here how I do it with the black render. As you can see, I'm just importing the black renders, duplicating them to cover the face of where I want the render to show, merging them into one, and then creating a masking layer with the selected area. And I'll do this for all the materials in the project until I'm happy with what I have there.
That make you wanna change your scene and wanna be the one on my team. Tell me, would you see what's the point in waiting anymore? Cause girl, I've never been more sure that baby it's you. This ring here represents my heart and everything that you've been waiting for. Just say I do. Because I can see us holding hands, walking on the beach, our toes in the sand. I can see us on the countryside, sitting on the grassland side by side. You could be my baby, let me make you my lady. Girl, you amaze me, ain't gotta do nothing crazy. See, all I want you to do is be my love, so don't give away.
As you can see here, I'm doing some touch-ups with the balcony. I'm using levels instead of actually reducing the opacity, because when you add trees in the background, you want to be able to show the trees and not have it go through your objects. Next up, this is optional. You can create a ground line. I'm just drawing mine in roughly, but your project will have ground lines.
I can see us holding hands, walking on the beach, our toes in the sand. I can see us on the countryside, sitting on the grassland side by side. You could be my baby, let me make you my lady. Girl, you amaze me, ain't gotta do nothing crazy.
The next thing you want to do is you want to create a new layer above the masking layer for shadows. You want to hold Alt and you want to click onto the masking layer to link it, and select where you would like the shadows. Using the fill tool and the foreground black color, you want to click, and that will create the shadow. And then after that you can just reduce the opacity of the shadow to whatever you feel is right. As you can see here, my shadow is coming from the top left, so I reduced the opacity on where I need it and link the layers to the masking layers to give it a shadow feel.
Where'd you go? You know how I've been.
The next little touch up we're going to do is the window. So we want to select the window using the default base plan, and I'm just going to create a gradient. You can do any color you like. I originally went with black and white, but I switched it to blue. And you want to just get a nice gradient going from left to right corners and reduce the opacity of the gradient so it's not as bold. After you've done this, you can select the corners of the gradient and just do a white overlay and reduce the opacity of that white overlay to give it kind of like a cutting edge over the window and make it not seem as bold with the gradient.
Just to feel the sun. It's so quiet, but I hear you.
The next stage is reducing the thickness or the boldness of the materials that we have added. We're going to do this by adding an adjustment layer. I did levels, and you want to link the levels layer using the Alt click to the masking layer, and you want to reduce it. This doesn't reduce the opacity, it just creates lightness within the material. So any material behind or any layer behind the materials will not show up. Whereas if you reduce the opacity, it will. So when we add trees, we don't want those showing behind the building. Now the next stage is to add the trees. I use paintbrush tool. I like to set out where I put my trees before I do the separate layers because that's a bit time consuming. So as you can see, I've set out roughly where I want my trees to sit, and I'll create a new layer for each tree. There are heaps of brush tools with trees that you can use, available to download online. These are just some that I've picked out and that I think would look nice within the theme of the building, but it's all up to your project. As you can see, I'm just going through and creating a new layer for each tree and adding them into my plans. After you've added all your trees, you want to reduce the opacity of the trees. Now this is obviously dependent on your project and your viewing pleasure, whatever you think works best. I like to create different opacities, and more bold opacities for the bigger trees. I think it gives it a nice hierarchy and a nice look. One tip that I will say is do not use the same tree in the same project. Always switch the trees and make them different because no tree is the same. Now I'm just adding some bushes to the balcony to give the balcony a little bit of a touch up. I think it's looking a bit blank. Obviously every project is going to be different like I've said before, so just add trees or bushes or little touch ups wherever you think is necessary using these tools. Now the last little touch up I'm going to do, and I think it gives the project a nice finish off. You want to select your masking layer and you want to select the background color, which is I used white, and you want to just reduce the opacity of your soft brush and just kind of go over the edges where the sun hits the wall. This gives it that feeling against the shadow behind it, that the sun is coming from that angle, and reduces the boldness of the materials. Obviously this is optional, but I think it looks good in some circumstances. Now for the final little touch-ups, I've reduced the opacity of my ground line just to reduce the thickness of the building, and I added a background to my elevation, which I just used a soft paperbrush sort of background instead of just the white. I think it fits nicely within the theme, but obviously every project will be different, like I've said multiple times, so pick what's best for you and what you think looks the best based on your inspiration.